This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium, episode 55.
Player profile, Matt.
Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson.
I think a good way to start this episode would be to talk about how you approach starting a Space Cats episode in general.
I think you and I...
what's your general, how do you, when you sit down to record this,
Sure.
what are you thinking?
You and I have really terrible recording etiquette, which is that, we do all these really boring things just before we record, like a lot of the bookkeeping stuff, the moment before we record, and so then it's completely impossible to quickly adjust into let's just have a conversation. Let's have some fun here.
Anytime I record a podcast, some stupid podcast with comedians and stuff, we're all just sitting around. There's drinks and
suddenly you're recording,
just goofing and then you just you hit record and it doesn't even feel with us. It's I'm sitting in the dark right now.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the dark with no pants on. And I'm wearing a blanket, and there's nothing in the room except for just this table that I have my laptop on. Not even my laptop, my girlfriend's laptop, just sitting on. And it's I'm in a cave. There's nothing to respond to.
If you could change our method,
off.
what would you do? Here's what's funny is I think the best intros we ever have are when it's we just played a game and we're time to go record right now.
Oh, yeah.
And then all we do is we're just ready to start talking about the game.
I think the very best would be us in space, obviously, looking out on, on Jupiter or something.
Because we're really close to it.
We haven't established, canonically where we do record, so I think this is maybe a good time for, the story of the show to kind of pick a spot where we are transmitting from.
Hunter. Uranus?
Oh, that's a swear, and we don't do that on this show, so that's going to get picked up by the filter.
Oh, no.
I'm going to apologize to everyone that was super offended by that bum joke.
That bum joke and that bum joke.
Mm-hmm. It was a bummer joke.
Hunter, I just want to delay this forever because I don't want to talk about myself today. That's what I'm
right. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Matt, tell us what is the subject of today's episode? Can you tell us what the subject?
It was your idea. I think you have to tell us.
I remember you being this one's about me, you said, and you just kind of chucked the mic at me, and it was in our recording studio on Uranus, and you were just Hunter, I'm hot right now to talk about me and myself and just me, and at first you weren't even going to have me in it. You were no, you're not in this one. This was
supposed to be the first episode without you, right? Me embarking on the new quest of Space Matt's Peace Mattles.
Yeah, Space Matt's Peace Mattles, the story of Twilight Imperium 4th edition.
Yeah,
which that would have been a better title than whatever we picked, or player profile, whatever. That's lame.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so today we just wanted to do something a little bit different. We wanted to do an episode just kind of breaking down Matt as a strategy game player. And I think the reason we're doing this right now is because, first of all, we haven't done one of the fun episodes that's just kind of outside of the general kind of strategy stuff. But this is going to have a fair amount of strategy talk because we're talking about Matt in the context of, how does he play games? How does he approach games? And especially since we covered Secret Conversations and Whispers last week, I feel
it's very relevant.
It's very relevant with Matt. And so it just felt this would be a good way to sort of extend that conversation within a specific context.
Yeah.
Because also you guys should kind of know you're listening to these bozos every week, and you should kind of know
why am I offering the kind of advice that I tend to offer is sort of the thought process.
And Matt, he doesn't know anything about board games,
Basically.
He's just...
Well, I know more than you.
I mean, you know more. You know the rules to the game. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. You do know the rules. And
I'm interested in doing this idea because I think. Well, first off, we want to do it a lot more, right? We want to do. We're going to do an episode on Hunter, like either next week or very soon. But we want to like expand this into even more. I mean, I think definitely if we get a victor out of, we will. If we get a victor out of the Patreon tournament, no. When we have crowned our champion,
no, it'll be a 6-way tie.
Yeah, when we crown our champion, I would love to do a player profile on them. This is always something a Space Kitty could request for their special episode. If you want us to just play some games with you and then like describe you as a player, I think it's valuable to see the different ways people make choices. A, so that you can consider a new way to make choices, and B, so that you know the different types of players you might be up against and how to exploit their decision making or whatever. There's like a lot of value in just knowing how other people think in a more general sense. So,
right. And I think we learned from the conversation about secret conversations and whispers that there's a lot of different types of people that actually play Twilight Imperium.
Yeah,
and
lots
that
of different,
have different
preferences and styles that sometimes rely on specific structures to be present, to like be their best player.
Right.
So let's get into it. I think most of this is gonna be Hunter asking me questions because I do not know how to just like talk about myself for 30
How
minutes.
to just bloviate on just you and who
Exactly.
you are. Yeah, well, I mean, I would hate if you were good at that. So Matt, take a seat, Matt, and
hi.
just tell me we're here in Uranus, and where we record this live. And the thing about Uranus is that when you record there, it's always live. So like,
Hunter, it just feels like we're so far up my anus. I mean Uranus that I don't know how I can ever get past this episode.
Right. This one had to be in Uranus. You did say that specifically, and I mean we used to record on the moon because of all the cheese.
Right.
But this time it was
now
definitely
it's just my cheese.
Right. It's just your cheese. Oh wow, I'm done with that bit now. But Matt, since you're sitting right across from me, just tell me, what was the first strategy game you ever remember playing? And did you like it at all?
I mean, I think most people's answers is like Risk, I guess. We played a decent amount of like normal board games growing up. I didn't grow up in like a cool, and I use the word cool in weird air quotes, board game house. But like we played a lot of like Michigan Rummy, which is weird. And
what is
people
that?
might not even, it's just like a weird form of Rummy that has this board. I think it has other names, but my dad always called it Michigan Rummy. But we would play that. We would play like a lot of dice games and card games, but then we also had Risk and Monopoly. And we'd play a lot of Risk and Monopoly. And
Were you good at Risk at all?
No, God no. I was 11 and my dad would just crush us, or my big brother would beat us. It's just like it was just a thing to do when the power went out,
Right.
And then in college, early college, I was hanging out with our friend Sean, our mutual friend Sean, and he was hanging out with a bunch of kids in the honors college, and they all played Axis and Allies. And
but we had played it before, hadn't you?
I never had. You had played with some other people, but I'd never touched it because I didn't care about strategy games that much. I wasn't.
Oh my god! Wow, I didn't even realize that.
The first time I ever played it was not. If there may have been one time we played with the super old one that was just wooden blocks. Someone like Jason had that or whatever, and I may have touched that one time and played like 2 rounds, but we definitely did not finish, and I definitely wasn't familiar with what was even going on when we played it. But we played a decent amount in college with this other group of people that were all significantly more intelligent than me in every aspect of life. And so when I would play with them, first off, it was like my first major strategy game. And second, they were all definitely smarter than me. So I kind of just played as a vassal. I just let them tell me what to do. Usually they would put me as America, and it was just like, we'll tell you what to buy, and then in round 4 you'll come sweep up and you'll have some fun rolling some dice. But until then, you just sit in the corner I don't want to put this as like they made me do that.
Yeah, you were
I was a
happy to
very
do that.
willing participant to just be like, tell me what to build. I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid to make decisions on my own because I feel like I'll ruin your game if I make the wrong decision. So I'm just going to let you tell me every single thing to do.
God, we have to do an Access and Allies stream now.
I know.
I didn't know that you were. I thought, for some reason, I thought you played along with all of us in high school and that you knew a little bit about the game going into college. I didn't realize that you were basically playing blind.
No, I went in blind.
Wow.
But we played with people who had like revised edition, and then Sean and I bought the Pacific and Europe 1940s, which had the huge board, the 6-foot long board when you put them together. And all that kept happening was we thought it was the more I got a little bit understanding of it, the more I was just like, I wish Russia could secede from the Allies, or Germany could kick Japan out and just try to do their own thing or whatever. It's just always like, why can't we betray each other? I remember specifically multiple times we talked about, and I think we even tried it once, of like, is there a Cold War setup for Axis and Allies? And we looked for other people's setups. We spent like 4 hours setting up a Cold War setup, and
we never played it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that day. That was ridiculous. I can't believe we did that. And I'm pretty sure, actually, now that I think about it, that I was the one that was like, I don't want to do it now.
Yeah. It took too long, and it's not worth it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, it really just came down to like, I wasn't very good at strategy games. But then you all started getting very, very interested in Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, and what was your first exposure to Twilight Imperium? Just period. What did you?
We had a group message board that one of our friends made back in the day of like pre-Facebook group chats and stuff, where one of our friends made a website for us to all go have a chat room on.
Oh God, it was awful. You had to go to a website to talk to your friends.
I remember a post that was like, hey, here's some board games we're thinking about getting. And I remember just seeing Twilight Imperium on it, and when I saw it, my only impression was like, well, that if I can't understand Axis and Allies very well, I'll never be able to touch Twilight Imperium.
Right.
And then later, you and Sean were very interested in that Dice Tower introduction video for TI3, their whole breakdown and everything. And you guys wouldn't shut up about it. And I was just like, well, it's a 30-minute rules explanation, and I don't understand any of it by the end of that video, so I don't know why I would be interested in this board game. I kind of don't care, but
that's really
I
crazy.
enjoy. I know, it's very weird considering where we are now, but I just remember thinking I'm not good enough at strategy games. I don't know that I would want to do it, except for the hook that you could betray each other, which is what I always wanted from Axis and Allies.
Why is that such a core? Because that's like such a core thread to you as a player.
It is the same thing as anyone who like wants to break the rules of like the video game that they're playing. It's like, I want to break outside of the boundary in this Halo map or whatever it. It's just like that desire to like, I want to shake it up. I want to change the context of this game.
Almost like you're looking at the game that's there and you're like, well, I want to make my own game.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. And
that's
so then with
off the table.
Right. And the other thing is, I just knew I wanted to, it's like if any of us got Twilight Imperium, I was going to want to play it, but I assumed one of you would get it because you wouldn't shut up about it. But then I went and I was on a job in Mississippi for like 4 or 5 weeks, and there was a board game store there that had it on sale. It was like $60 to get Twilight Imperium. And again, as the person who was just like, I don't know if I actually care about this game, but I know it's a big deal, and I know it would be a huge thing if I like showed up with it. So I went ahead and bought it. Like I had the money and bought it for super cheap, and then sent, the text to you and Sean just being like, guess what is going to happen as soon as I get back from this job. And, it was like just the exciting thing to get it, but I still had no confidence in my ability to play it.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first game we played was at somebody's house? I don't even remember.
Was it Chris's house?
Chris's house.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about your purchase when we like got it all out? Do you remember?
Well, here's what you have to know about Hunter and I as friends and me as how my relationship is with all of my friends is I've always been the organizer. Like the person who we used to have LAN parties at my house, and I was, I was the one who kind of pushed for that to happen, and we would make stupid short films and stuff, and I was always kind of the one who was like begging people to do that in high school, and it's always kind of come down to me to like know the rules of what we're doing, and that hadn't applied to a board game context yet. But then with TI, I was the only person who'd read the rule book. And the rulebook says it should take an hour to 2 hours. Twilight Imperium 3rd edition should take 1 to 2 hours.
To play. That's what it
play.
says?
That's what it says on the box.
Wow. That might be the most egregious offense of that, like, playtime to actual time. Wow, I did not know that. That's so wild.
So we started a game in someone's basement, basically, or their, like, living room.
They didn't even really want to play. Like, they were just kind of like, whatever.
2 of the people didn't really want to play. 2 or 3 of the people didn't really want to play. You, me, and Sean and Shelton were there? I don't know. I think there were 4 of us that were, like, interested enough. But it was at, like, 6 or 7 at night or later than that. It was at night. Like, it was... If we had known what we were getting into, we would have known that this was the stupidest thing we could be doing to try to start it this late. It could have been like 10 o'clock at night for all I remember.
Yeah, no, I think it was really, really late.
Yeah, because we started it, and then we finished round 1 2 hours later, and we were like, no, we're not playing this game right now, actually. We should pack this up.
What was your first impression of it, you think?
It's really hard to remember. Because I genuinely don't, like, I'm trying to process when I went from, like, really gung-ho about this game, like, how I got to that point from where I was before, which was just like, I don't know what this is. I think it was just enough excitement of the fact that we finally owned it that I was starting to care about thinking about it strategically. And here's the big difference, I guess. With Axis and Allies, it was someone else taught me Axis and Allies, and I was never very comfortable with the rules. I'd never read the rule book all the way through.
Right.
And I'd never had to design my own strategy on my own. But with Twilight Imperium, there was no other option. Like, I was the only one who knew the rules. And
and I wasn't going to read that rule book.
Right, and we played all the rules wrong our first game. We completely botched tactical actions, like, altogether. I don't even remember how we did them. I just remember, like, a game or 2 later being like, wait, we've been doing this like so intensely wrong.
I remember the command counter system was really quite... I actually didn't even know if I liked that part of the game.
Right, it was very
I remember being like,
for a while. But anyways, I think just by sheer nature of being the person who had to teach it, that meant I had to invest in like figuring out what the strategy of this game was, and it just started to click. Like, I don't know when it started to click, but it started to click that I cared about this game and liked making the types of decisions it forced me to make.
What were some of the other? Oh, go ahead.
The other big thing was just like thematically, right? Is we had fun even in our dumb like 2-hour session of only 1 round. The types of things we were doing were fun enough to where I think honestly at that point we weren't even thinking that intense about strategy, right? Like, it was just this big board game that we knew was a space opera. Mm-hmm. We weren't thinking of it as a strategy game. We were thinking of it as this huge space opera. And the moment when, in that very first game, Sean was Sardak Nor, and someone offered him some kind of deal, and he just went, well, I tell you, I may be just a simple bug man, but I reckon you owe me 4 trade goods there, partner. And, like, he pulled that out of nowhere. Like, Sean just in a moment decided my space bugs are bugman space farmers that farm moisture. He like completely developed this whole like backstory to their faction, and like then we sunk our teeth into it. You know, like it just was like, oh, we get to be characters and we get to like make stupid decisions with each other and make weird deals, and it became. I mean, it was all about the thematics, I think, for us. It was a fun thing to, like, think of strategies, but I don't even think... It's not like I invested thought before a game into what strategy I was going to employ.
Right.
We played very much like, you're going to get dealt a random race, we're going to build the map and see what we come up with, and you just start going. Like, it was always shooting from the hip.
Yeah, we built such horrible maps to play
Oh,
on.
we messed up a few times too. I remember I think it was my first, maybe it was a later one. I remember a Jolnar game though, where I was completely locked into my corner because we had messed up the anomalies. I had 3 anomalies in front of me that I had only 2 ways to get onto the rest of the board, and they were like very long paths. And then Necro came and blocked one of those paths, so I was just trapped in like I think 3 system tiles for the entire game.
Wow.
With literally no option to get out.
That's insane.
Yeah.
What factions do you feel like you like kind of started going towards when you were like first playing Twilight Imperium?
My first faction was Mentak. I don't remember why I picked them beyond just cool space pirates, I guess. I don't know if I even made a thematic choice.
Well,
I
yeah,
think it was just a
we
random
didn't
draw.
We didn't know stuff. Like I remember I picked the extra the first time because I was just like turtles. Cool.
Yeah. I think though that getting the Mentak first kind of put this weird thing that it sort of established the idea of like getting in on trades, getting in on. I mean, they worked differently at that time, but just the idea of like trade goods as this malleable currency that you can play with. You can get away with a lot of weird things. I think that always excited me, and I think just from the sheer standpoint of it's worth reiterating the Axis and Allies thing, which is like Axis and Allies was a game where if it was 3v2, like we basically had 2 separate rooms allotted for conversations to have happen because the Allies would need to go talk about their next round and then come back to the table. And the reason we always wanted a game that was bigger than that is we wanted 2 people to leave the room and then go back into the Allies all step out, but then America and Britain go back in, and it's like, hey, we need to talk about Russia real quick, though. Like, that was always sort of a feel that we wanted, and TI was that. So, like, from the get-go, it was all about secret conversations for us. Like, every faction was played in a way where, what can I do to have secret conversations? Because that's just the point. That's the point of the game for us.
I mean, you were talking about like Sean putting on this like kind of Bugman affect that he's just making up off the fly.
Yeah.
When we played, it's a bummer to me that you didn't play Axis and Allies with us in high school because when we did that, we were just Churchill and like Hitler and like.
Well, and I remember that. I remember that even with our group. Like our group, the person who played Germany had a German accent the entire game, and it was all about saying things in a bombastic, no, we will do it this way, and it was like. And I think that bled into this is like if we're gonna play this game all day, we're gonna get stupid about it. Like that's the point of it. Like you don't spend all day playing a game with someone because you want to invest in deep strategies. You spend all day with someone because you want to have fun.
Right.
But I think too, the other thing that kind of instilled this penchant for secret conversations was the fact that TI3 base game, especially the way we played it, was like the most Cold War thing ever, right? We were terrified to attack each other. And TI3 base game was Imperial granted you 2 victory points. You just get it for playing Imperial. 2 whole victory points. And then Initiative lets you take the next, like whoever took Initiative would get Speaker and then would be able to pick Speaker token first, or I would get to pick strategy cards first next round. So the order was always first person picks Imperial, second person picks Initiative, the rest of the players get to pick a strategy card that is different. But like the first 2 up always pick 8 and then 1. And then there's a clock on the game. And we would end plenty of games at Hunter's at 6 points, but in 2 rounds, he's going to get Imperial to score 2 more points, and we can see where he's going to get 2 more points. We might as well end it right now.
Right.
Because of the way that Imperial thing is going to time out. There were so many games where that's all that mattered was the clock. And because of the clock, like we were terrified of aggression, and so we just leaned into the social aspect of it. The like it became less about what plays can you make and more about what deals can you make to grant yourselves the resources or whatever you need to score victory points, right? Like, how can you get more trade goods out of somebody else so that you can score the point?
It also helps that we didn't know the rules really.
Well, yeah, we probably broke a bunch of stuff to make things the wrong way, but like in general, we were just like all we were doing was playing diplomacy, really. I mean, like with more mechanics to it, but like at the end of the day, if we had, it's funny that we never took up diplomacy. At least I never did.
No, I played it a couple times, but not really that much.
But I think it became more of a strategy game about, like, I was obsessed with just knowing things that other players didn't know. So it was just like, hey, so-and-so, go into the other room with me. What are you thinking? What do you think about doing this round? Oh, I don't know.
I'm the only one that I know that does that. That is,
but
just
I think we all used to do it to a certain like amount. Like, it was just about like, when do you think you're going to play leadership? Do you think you're going to play it on the first turn or the second turn? And like, sometimes it was like we were bad and we were trying to make these decisions based on nothing, but it felt like the right way to play of being like, I got to get the right information because that's what I have over my opponents, is knowing what's going to come. Right. That's the only thing I can plan for, is the information that I have. So I have to choose when I withhold certain information and when I give up certain information.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it was just all about deal making, basically.
Yeah,
because
it was all about deal making and secrets.
Right. And at first, I feel like we didn't understand the game well enough to do anything besides that. So, like, we didn't really we didn't really understand how beautiful, like, the strategy card system was. Or it became, rather, because it wasn't good right off the bat. Once all
I know is the original pitch from you and Sean was, there's these things called trade goods, and you can just give them to anybody at any time. And there's these agendas that completely change the rules of the game as things happen. And that was like the two main things that we were excited about, is like not about any other mechanics of the game, but just like you can do stupid stuff with trade goods and the game is going to break itself.
Right. Yeah. And like, it sucked that those agendas were attached to like a strategy card that like you didn't really want to take, because like we were saying, there's a very specific, like, no, you need to take Imperial and then Initiative if you're second, and then after that it's just kind of like
right. Yeah, especially early on, there's like no reason to take politics, so the agenda card thing, or the agenda aspect of the game was always a little underwhelming. But I don't know, I think for so long my success in the game was, at least from my perception, based purely off of who I was able to like be smarmy with, you know, like who could I just get in bed with me, and that would be how I won a game.
Yeah. I honestly, in those days, I remember always thinking that you were a very friendly, like, I don't know if it just worked out, we were kind of always on the same side of stuff, but I remember when it was the early TI3 days, I always felt like I could deal with you really easily, or that like it was really easy for us to create like sort of makeshift alliances that weren't really alliances, like, you know how it is, especially
I was always willing to talk, at the very least. Like, I'm always willing to talk, because if anything, hopefully I can just get some information out of you, and that's all I care about knowing, is like getting something that can maybe inform me to make another decision later. Yeah,
it's really funny thinking about it in that context, that I think I used to be a lot more willing to volunteer that information to you. And that over time, I feel like I give, I am less willing to give stuff away like
this. This podcast has certainly made us more opposed to each other as players.
Right, in games, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Well, do we want to kind of fast forward to the present at this point and kind of talk about TI4 a little bit?
Because honestly, within TI3 too, it's like we were never good enough to, I think, elaborate on like any more strategy than that. I don't think. I think
especially early. No,
especially early, but even by the end of our TI3 career, like we were reading up on strategies and stuff. But even then, once you got into the game, I mean, again, it was, I'm gonna get a random faction. I'm gonna kind of haphazardly put together a pie slice, and I'm just gonna go with whatever I feel like in the moment. I really, even up until the end of TI3, I don't remember ever prepping a strategy beforehand, or thinking about what I need to do. There was like general rules that we had with factions, you know, like that we knew that like, okay, with Barony, you can afford to get bigger ships. And like we knew the general themes of each faction, but it wasn't like we ever had build orders or like specific things we were trying to accomplish with the faction.
Like with what we try and do with this show. Right. It's funny that you bring that up, though, because I remember a trip we took together down to Little Rock, because I had to, like, notarize a letter. like we had to drive all the way across the state just because I needed to notarize something and mail it. I don't remember why. But and maybe that's just how it is in Arkansas. It's like if you want to notarize it, well, there's only one person in the state that does that. That actually might have been the deal. But regardless, I remember us finding. I wish I could remember where it was. I actually tried to look for it the other day. It was like a little website someone had made that just had like all of the factions in TI3.
I've seen it. I feel like I found it before, but it's also just based off of a BGG post. There's like a really good BGG post somewhere out there of someone breaking down all the factions like really in depth.
Yeah. And I would read that, and then I would like try and apply a lot of that logic to the games that I would play. So I mean, like I also feel like I was a lot pickier about what faction I would play. In TI3
I was
in
not
general.
at all.
No,
I wanted to play
you were
everything.
just like whatever.
My goal was to play every single faction. I would like refuse to play a faction if I had played it within the past 10 factions. You know,
right. Which makes it hard to have a favorite. I feel like.
I've always struggled. I mean, I always used to just kind of say like Jolnar, I guess, maybe Mentak, but neither of them were very strong favorites.
Yeah.
I should say we this was in our notes, but like I think the biggest shift into like really, I think what you're talking about, I remember that like going through all the factions, and I think the big shift was when we got away from regular Imperial. When we got the expansions,
for sure,
you weren't locked into that Imperial initiative picking order. You like Imperial just got different, didn't guarantee points that way. And so from that point on, it was like, oh, I can pick any strategy card at any point in the game, and they're all good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're not all great, but they're all useful in some way. And now I can actually like try to make more informed decisions on what I'm going to get. I think
the strategy
before
cards just made more sense at that point because the system wasn't so dictated.
Yeah, before with Imperial 1, you really are just like waiting for your turn to get Imperial, and so it's like, I guess in the meantime I'll just get, I don't know, tech. Like it never felt like I was making an informed decision. It was just like I'm just gonna get something until I can get Imperial.
Right. Well, all right. So let's talk. Last year. Like let's get all the way to it. TI4. How do you feel like you have? Actually, let's say, what has been the common thread with you as a player going into TI4 and going all the way from being this like little Nancy boy that doesn't know anything about strategy games,
right,
to like the playing TI4 all the time person that you are these days? What do you feel like has been the common thread that has stuck with you?
So I think the best way to answer this is to say like, what was the thing in TI4 that most excited me? And I think it's the thing that excited both of us. But when they first started releasing info and like we eventually got the rule book, reading about how the new trade system worked,
right,
was like blowing our minds how much more flexible it was. And because we were coming from people who like to make deals, like the fact that it sounds like in TI4 you have even more like ways to make deals. The promissory note system is even better. Like they gave you more opportunities to make deals, that I think I leaned even harder into that, except for now I'm thinking about the game even more. And so the deals aren't just like the stupid whatever kind of deals I was trying to make before. It's like, no, it's actually more mathematical how you need to consider making your deals. Like you need to know exactly what you're getting out of it, but it still relies on that aspect of the game, right? For me, I am still a deal-making player more than anything else.
Right. Yeah, and it helps that the word deal is actually in the rule book.
It's like a lexicon thing.
Like
now.
It's a real thing.
Right.
Instead of it just kind of being like, we just didn't really like dictate that.
Yeah.
You just kind of, you know what we mean, basically.
Right.
Like, it's like there were promissory notes and there were trade goods, and it's like, whatever you do with those, you do with those. We're not going to like figure it out for you. Whereas with TI4, there's a lot more like, no, this is really built into the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it had a terrible side effect on me, which is I want to deal make my way out of every scenario, which means I don't do all the other things you're supposed to do to like save face and like protect your pie slice, right? Mm-hmm. Like what's the number one thing that like I get punished for?
It's playing too thin, spreading yourself out and not having a strong enough defense, basically.
Right. And in my head, I'm always thinking I have a solid defense because I have these little handshake agreements behind closed doors with my neighbors that they won't attack me because whatever, we've struck some sort of accord, and that's what's allowing me to leave my borders way too weak.
Right.
Because all I want to do is launch myself at objectives. I'm using deals as my borders more than I'm using ships and PDS.
Right. It's like people are agreeing to not attack you, but they're getting something for it, basically.
Yeah, and I try to always, like, I don't know. It's funny how I think we sometimes make me sound on this podcast because I like to play up the fact that, like, I'm not necessarily honorable, I guess. But the fact that I completely rely on deals for my playstyle seems to be against that, right? I mean, like, if people know I'm not necessarily going to be true to my word, why would they ever make deals with me?
Well, it's not, you're true to your word, but it's like math. Like, it's like, it's, you're not in control over whether you're going to be true to your word. This is kind of just like a philosophical idea, I think, with TI in general, which is that if you make a deal with someone and then that deal doesn't work for you anymore, well, you still got to win the game. That's the only goal.
Right.
So, like, you, the thing is, the only difference between you and I feel like any other player is that most players would not make as many deals as you make. So there's a kind of implicit, like forever, let's say for however many deals a player makes, the likelihood that they might have to, walk one of those deals back or backstab goes up the more deals they make, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you make so many deals, you're like a spider. You are you're spinning these webs with so many players that it's not that you're any more or less honorable than anybody else. It's just like the likelihood that you're going to have to break a deal is always really high because you've made so many. It would be true of anybody.
Here's the misconception I want to, like, break apart, which is, like, I don't think of myself as dishonorable because, first off, when I'm making deals, usually what I'm trying to do with someone is, like, point them towards a path of victory that doesn't include my stuff, help them in whatever way I can, and that also is helping me accomplish my thing without them taking my stuff. But I'm never... I don't feel like I'm ever lying in game. You know what I mean? There's like a really distinct difference of, like, I made a deal with you, but I was just lying the whole time and I was always planning on betraying you. It's like, no. When we made that deal, I believed in it. Right. But then so-and-so entered themselves into the picture or something messed up. The bad dice roll on my front, like, forced my hand to have to do something different. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm always susceptible to the changing board state. And so I'm always, it's not that I'm not going to hold to a deal, but if the logic says, if it would be completely stupid for me to keep to that deal just because I said I would hold my word, like, I'm not going to do it. I'm just straight up not going to hold true to my word if it no longer benefits me anymore. But when we made the deal, it was a thing that I intended on benefiting both of us.
Right. Yeah. I think that totally makes sense. That totally scans. It's just, it's only the frequency at which you make deals that makes you perceivably less honorable.
Right.
Basically. That's really it. It's just the amount.
Some of my favorite moments are playing in games where I'm sitting next to our friend Laura, who it's so sad that I don't get to play with her anymore. But because Laura was always really good about like reaffirming my belief in like what I just described, which is if I ever had to betray Laura in a deal, which happened multiple times, like we would make a deal and then something would happen and I would be like, Laura, I'm sorry, I'm about to blow up all your stuff. Laura would always be the person to be like, I understand. I get, like, the things have changed and here we go. I get it. Like, and that reaction was always so much more assuring of like, I'm not doing an inherently bad thing. I'm doing a strategically beneficial thing. It's not like I'm just trying to like screw everyone at the table over at all moments.
He's like a politician. Like, listen to what He's saying, do not believe his lies.
They're not lies. It really. I'm an honest.
I know.
Person.
I know that they aren't lies. And I'm telling you, the thing that I'm going to stick on forever is this: just that you make so many, that that it is such a core part of your strategy that to me playing against you, a lot of times I won't really consider a deal from you unless it can't bite me in the back, unless it's just like a a transaction, like just a 1-in-1 transaction,
right?
Sure, but yeah, no, I like a deal. Almost never, and it's because of that. It's because of that understanding of like you're going to make a lot of deals, and the second that the board state shifts, I don't ever want to be on the bad end of a deal I've struck with you,
right?
Because I know that you're going to make a whole bunch. If you were just going to like make a deal or two, with like me or your other neighbor or like whatever,
right?
Then it would be easier to be like, well, okay, this might not.
It's the fact, I know what it is. It's the fact that I go, Hunter, do you want to go have a secret conversation? And we go have a secret conversation, and we come back in the room, and I go, okay, Laura, do you want to go have a secret conversation real quick? Yep. And Laura's your other neighbor, and it's like, wait, no, but we just, hang on, why are you needing to talk to them? And I'm just like, no, it's not a big deal. I just have some other things to talk about. But you have no reason to believe I'm not making a plan that's now against you or something.
Right. And I mean, I think that's almost always true.
Right.
And it's not even that. And the thing is too, like in that situation where you're going to talk to me and you're going to talk to somebody that's my neighbor, I know it's not based on emotion. Like you're going to make the choice based on the board state, but you're like keeping both options open. And
exactly.
The fact that
that's such a big factor that I'm not even, I don't even think about consciously.
Yeah.
But when I'm making a deal, our deal isn't even finalized when we finish the conversation, because it's like, okay, I now see what I can get out of Hunter. Can I get something better out of Sean? Like, I need to go check my other options. I need to go see what deals are available. I don't think I usually leave secret conversations with like, okay, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this. It's that like swapping information thing.
Right.
It's just like, what are your goals right now? These are my goals right now. How can we make those work? Well, I would like it if you did this. Okay, you would like it if I did that. Okay, got it. I'll consider that. Let's go back into the room.
And it's made it where like at this point, I don't want to tell you anything when we play. I'm like, do not tell him anything. Any information you give him can be used against you, and also helps him understand the board overall, which is not good for you.
Yeah, basically. I'm trying to. I don't think I read the board especially well, but I
just
do
ask
try to
everybody what's going on, and you figure it out.
I just try to get the information from everyone. That's right. This makes me think of an anecdote of one of our streams. The stream where I won as the Winnu.
Yeah.
It ends with you really upset because you were the Muat, and you gave me your support for the throne in like the last round, or like the second to last round, or something like that. And the way you described it was, you knew you had to offer me, the only way you stood a chance was to give me your support for the throne, because you knew I wouldn't take any other deal.
Right.
And I remember thinking in the moment, I don't know if that's true. And I think it's because of my weakness as a player of, if you had just taken me in the room and started offering me stuff, I may have been blindsided by the fact that we were even talking and you were giving me information that I may not have specifically been like, nope, it's the support for the throne or bust. Like, I think maybe I can be coerced into things if I'm not looking at all of the end results.
And that's, I feel like that's a general problem with you. And yeah, I didn't recognize it in that moment, because I always kind of because I think I've gotten to a point where making deals with you is so like it really weighs heavy on my soul every time I'm like, all right, I guess it's time, because you're the devil. Like it's like making a deal with the devil. You're like, well, I can't believe I've had to turn to this horrible place, but here we are.
Same. I'll compare it to how we both feel about support for the throne. Why would I give someone support for the throne if it then leads to them winning? Your opinion is, why would I make a deal with Matt if that deal could lead to him winning? Specifically me. Like, if that would be, if you could make a deal with Sean and it leads to him winning, and that would be okay. But if you make a deal with me and it leads to me winning, that's the worst thing that could ever happen to you.
Right. Yeah, and I think in that game in particular, I was so convinced that you weren't going to take anything else, and yeah, it's hard for me to remember I remember that nugget of me thinking that, but I can't really remember all of the information of the game in general. But yeah, I mean, I think I just have a perception of you being a shrewd deal maker when it actually isn't really that you're shrewd. It's that you are doing it a lot, that you're like...
It's the shotgun approach to deal making. It's just like...
And the other thing is your brain is like a Windows 98 PC. Like it computes, and it's, you know, it's got like, it's solid at what it does. And, you know, we all loved Windows 98. But it gets over like... You try and process way more data than I ever try and process. Like, I will process, like, one thing at a time, whereas you're processing, like, 10 things, which, like, I feel like when you...
process all of it well. Yeah.
Right. So, like, your pitfalls always end up being, like little mistakes that you made because you were processing too many things. So, yeah, I mean, that I should have played into that. Sometimes, especially when I'm playing Muat, it's... You know, I think my problem is...
You're already in a living nightmare.
Right,
so.
right. And like, going into that, like, I get into, like, kind of a slump in, like, the mid-game, especially when I'm playing a faction like that.
Well, don't worry. Next week, we'll talk plenty about you and your...
Well, are we going to do that? Are we going to do that next week? I don't know if we want to do that next week.
Well, soon, for sure.
We'll get there soon. All right, well, is there any other stray stuff we want to get in before we head on out? What do you feel like? What was like your do you remember any particular game moment that you feel like you were like, wow, that is like essential me, like that, like if any of us, you know, if you had like a highlight reel of Twilight Imperium plays that you're like proud of, like
it's
what
that, I mean, it is that Winu game. That Winu
game is crazy.
I mean, it's Winu, so this is sort of inherent in Winu, but like I left myself wide open. And Doug jumped on me, and I immediately went free support for the throne for anyone that wants to deal with Doug.
Right.
And like and then Mike was kind of like, oh, I think I'm interested. And like we started making deals to make it work, and like the plans were all set in stone. And then it didn't stop there though, because then at a certain point, Doug and I started going into the other room and saying, and I was talking to him about like, what is gutting me going to do for you? I don't see any objectives in my slice. And he started being like, no, you're right. I think I need to pull back because I think all I'm doing is making myself a target. Mike's starting to like, he was just like, I need to pull back so I get both of you away from me and I want to stop. And just like that whole interplay of like, I got to talk to Mike. I got to talk to Doug. I got to talk to Hunter because he's next to Mike. And I just had to like start coordinating everyone a little bit and getting an idea of who was maybe going to come against me, because there's no other way I'm ever going to win as Winu if I don't know who's going to attack me before they're going to attack me.
What stream is that? Just like we've talked about it a lot.
It's the first or second stream. It's an early stream.
Yeah.
No, isn't that the 100,000 live stream?
Oh, is it? Is it that one? No, I don't think it is. I don't think that's the one.
Here's what I know. Here's what I know about the stream. It's the first stream where we played with weird rules. So it's also kind of a bunk game anyways.
Wait,
it's the first time we played with audience agendas.
No. We did not play with weird rules that game, because that was when we were still writing this is not great.
This is terrible audio.
Yeah, this is terrible podcasting right now.
It's the April 7th, 2018 game.
That's the one. Yeah. So just, cut around that. But yeah, good. All right, well, do you think in a weird way, because of that, do you think Winu is like kind of your secret favorite?
Yeah, I've said this on the Discord multiple times. I want to declare Winu as my favorite, just from the sheer point of like what a stupid favorite to have, and like it is what Winu requires. Like Winu requires outside of game elements ways to win, right?
Right.
You cannot win a game based on purely like mathematical that like Winu is the worst faction.
Right.
But if you can wiggle your way out, you might be okay.
Right, because they have this really weird, hyper-specific path to victory.
Right, that's the other thing.
There's no way they can execute it themselves.
Right. I've been talking a lot about how Yin is also like right in my wheelhouse, but Winu has that thing of like the path is clear, the pitfalls are clear. You just got to keep everyone off your back.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's a fascinating problem to have.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. That you would like the faction that
I enjoy the
pushes
challenge of like how are you going to get yourself out of the mechanical problems. It's why I don't think I've played Muat at all yet, but I think I think I have a similar interest in Muat of like how can I gain the resources necessary to succeed in other ways? Like how how can I make it all work for me when I cannot do it mechanically? Like there's just no way. You talked so much in all your guide of just like the tech path isn't great. You don't have enough money to start with. There's just no way to get away from any of those problems.
Right.
Except for if you can just like make people give you stuff, or I don't know. Like I don't know what the right solution is, but
well, that's why I settled on that promissory note being the kind of
it.
Yeah,
that's the linchpin to the whole puzzle. Yeah.
But the problem is that sometimes people haven't really responded too well to it. Now we're just kind of doing like a weird. Now we're just talking about Muat.
But it's all to the point of the episode, which is to say like this is if you identify with me as a player, if you've been hearing this and thinking that's kind of how I think about it, like that's where you take it, right? Is you need to play the factions that maybe have something big on the table to offer, right? That is actually Muat has like the best promissory note in terms of like value that you could give out to somebody. Maybe not the best. I shouldn't say the best, but you know what I mean, right? It's a very high value promissory note. And if you can get something out of it, that's amazing. So someone who can take that and start wheeling and dealing it and coming up with interesting ways to use it, they might find some success with Muat. That might be the actual strategy guide for Muat, is like their mechanical abilities are terrible. So you have to use their other aspects to win yourself the game.
Well, which is essentially just this promissory note, but yeah.
Promissory note, but also like the fact that you start with a war sun, right? Like, I mean, you could make the case for like just threaten to completely demolish someone's home system, like ignoring your own, like make the deal with the person on your right and then send the war sun to your left. Right. Like if you can make the deals work, maybe that works. Obviously, it doesn't work mechanically. That's what I mean. Is like those types of players can maybe find success with. It's like Jensen on our Discord. He plays a really good ghost. He's won 11 out of 12 games as ghosts.
Wow.
And it's because he's also like a deal maker kind of player. It's the same sort of idea of just like you find your success in different ways. You use the benefits of the faction in a completely different way than like the typical tactics would allow you to think about.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Muat, so I'm going to a dark place.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I would say challenge accepted. Put your money where your mouth is, and
I'll start trying
play
to
them, and I want to see it. I want to see it before I really believe that is the case.
Yeah, I actually don't have any confidence in my abilities, but it's something that it's an interesting puzzle I want to try.
Yeah. Well, let's see it on stream. Let's see you on the stream. Yeah. Deal. All right. Deal.
Well, let's also make a deal and let's go do some errata. What do you say?
Hey, I want to have oh wait, I did that last week. I was going to say I want to have a secret conversation with you. Well, let's non-binding deal. Maybe we'll do errata, maybe we won't. We will. All right, welcome back to Space Cats, Peace, Turtles, Errata. What's up? Let's bring the energy up in here a little bit. Hey!
I just really enjoyed talking about me and myself.
Yeah, God,
I'm just excited to talk about all of these disagreements I had throughout the week. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm covered in sick at this point because I've puked many times listening to this sickening display of me-ness. The first piece of errata we have is from Papa Dane, Lord of the Imperium Dane of Twilight Imperium. That's works, right?
Dane of Twilight Imperium.
Dane of Twilight.
From the designer of Twilight Imperium.
Right, no, but like he's like a Dane, like a Dane.
I get it now. I didn't get it. He's the Great Dane.
The Great Dane of Twilight Imperium. There is nothing that prohibits action cards from being shown to others. Booyah!
So I said last week I was like 80 to 90% sure that you could show action cards to other people, and someone found the ruling where Dane emailed someone, and there's still lots of debate there. I've been showing this to people throughout the week, and even they're still like, I hate that then, and I disagree, and I don't think that's what he means. But it's the end gist really is, at one point Dane said, like, the real answer is, with your group, do whatever you want. It's a board game.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter to me. But There's nothing that specifically prohibits showing action cards. So his interpretation of the rule that says action cards remain hidden is similar to the justification we tried to give, which is to say they come to you hidden, they stay face down, nobody gets to look at that without your permission.
Right.
It is hidden from normal public view as every other component is public.
Right.
They are distinctly different, but it is not required by you as a player to never show them to anyone.
Right.
But I get that there's a vague language there, and I get that some people are just going to disagree with that. But suffice it to say, in our tournament, we're going to allow people to show action cards to each other. And secret objectives.
Yeah.
You shouldn't show your secret objective. There's way less value in showing a secret objective, but action cards, certainly, there's some value there.
And I mean, I think it's just his way of kind of saying, like, listen, we didn't, that's not in the game. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's kind of just
it's
like
not a component of
right.
of what we're talking. Yeah. There's so many things that, like, we have gone beyond the design of the board game and gone into, like, it really is actually more about etiquette of how you decide you want to deal with that problem.
Right. All right, well, this first real errata, anyways, is from Archduke Ake. This is all in regards to our Secret Conversations and Whispers episode from last week. Archduke says, it sounds like you guys are currently trying to balance two different games at once. You want to make it a fair system for the people playing in the Patreon tournament, but you also state that you want the games to be fun and dramatic to watch for everyone else. If the large majority of the players in the tournament state that they would prefer to not do secret conversations, and your response to that is, but it'll be more dramatic and fun for the people watching, then you might need to decide which is more important to you. Do you want to run a tournament that the players participating in will enjoy being in, or do you want it to be a fun and dramatic affair that is fun to watch later? I know it can be tempting to try and do both. For the first tournament, you may just need to figure out which is a higher priority and go for it.
So we did this. We basically set up a poll, actually, this last week. Only about 47 people participated in it. But I did want to get a better sense of, like, where the consensus was falling on this Whispers and Secret Conversations issue. Mm-hmm. And to give you the gist of the poll, there's just not a consensus at all. It was basically just a straight split down the middle. And so for us, we basically took the Secrets and Conversation, the Secret Conversation debate, and had to just start making decisions, because they're really... There are people that are, like, vehemently opposed to both. Like, I would never play a game without Secret Conversations, or I would hate to play a game with Secret Conversations. And then there's a lot of people who just don't care. They'll play whatever TI game you throw at them.
Right.
So Hunter and I have had to start instead thinking about sort of what Archduke Ake got into, which is, like, we just have to decide what's best for the structure of this tournament and what we're trying to achieve in this tournament. So for us, in these specific games... I think we're settling on just no whisper chat. We got two more errata that I want to get into before we, like, really kind of break all of this down. But we want to go with the thing that is going to generate better content. Because that's at the end of the day, like, we want to host a fun tournament, but we also want this tournament to be something that people are excited to experience through the show as well, like as viewers and as listeners. So we want to make something that is digestible. And I think the most interesting way to showcase a diplomacy game is by showing a game where you actually get to see the diplomacy happening. And the fact of the matter is, in Tabletop Simulator, there's no way for, like, us as a game master to read your whisper chat. So that really came down to being, like, the biggest reason we can't allow it. Is right. Because if we can't see the secret conversations you're having, we miss out on a ton of the negotiating that's going on, and that ruins, you know, the way we can judge the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also just, like, part of like, in the realm of tournaments for strategy board games. I think me and Matt are just kind of more thematic type people in general.
Yep.
And we feel like we kind of lean heavier on the thematic side of Twilight Imperium. But that all being said, we're definitely not going to ignore, like, people's wishes.
Right.
If we start playing and it seems like people are not happy with like the way that this is all set up, that won't be fun either. So it's I think the bottom line will be that we want the games to have we want people talking, and we want to be able to hear and see all of that, because so much of the game can come out of like deal making, basically what we've been talking about with Matt. This
if this episode is any indication, like you would miss out on all of the decision making of like me as a player if you didn't break down the conversations I was having with other players.
Right.
If you couldn't do that, you would be missing out on like why I'm making certain decisions.
Right.
Instead, if you could only look at like my board presence, you would be looking at the game the whole time, being like, why hasn't Matt built any more shit? He hasn't built like more than 3 ships in the past 4 rounds. What is he doing? He's being an idiot. And it's like, well, you're right, except for I've been talking to like all my neighbors and everyone who's in range with me, and trying to keep them from doing anything about it or whatever. So, I just think it comes down to like we want to see all of that. Let's break down some more of this kind of conversation, though. Wecker says, it's probably a good point to bring up that the difference between whispering and voice chat is huge in that you don't miss out on the table chat when you're whispering. I know it would throw me off a ton from the tabletop simulator community. It's like saying that taking someone to another room is a proper substitute for actually just whispering in their ear. We like this idea that secret conversations are kind of a resource. If Hunter and I step out of the room, sure, we're having a secret conversation, but the 4 of you now have an opening to talk about us behind our backs and figure out what we're plotting, and there's a whole element there. Like, you don't just... People have been proposing this idea that, like, well, if we allow secret conversations, people are just going to constantly have to talk to everybody before every single decision. And the reality is, you don't do that, because if you have a secret conversation with everyone before every moment, everyone knows that you're plotting. It's like it's getting into the worst of my problems, right? It's that you're processing too much information. You should only have secret conversations with the people you're starting to get ready to pull the trigger with. You know, I don't have a secret conversation with every single player on the board. I have a secret conversation with like my 2 neighbors when I need to move out of a vulnerable system or something like that.
And I think the fact that, so like with whisper chat, there's no strategic punishment at all for having secret conversations constantly. However, like if you step out of the room, there is a like if somebody did try and step out into the secret conversations channel with every single player, they are paying for that strategically. In the fact that everyone can see that that's what they're doing. Now everyone is paying attention to their thing, and probably by the second person has figured out what this is all about.
Exactly. You really do reveal a lot about like the fact that you're trying to pull something off by having even a single secret conversation.
For sure. Because I mean, like, so much of the game's information is shown. So like if people look at your slice and they look at, you know, your sheet and everything, they can probably work it out what it must be over.
Yeah,
or
here's what always happens. If someone steps out of the room to have a secret conversation, the first thing everyone does is goes, oh, let's see what they're in range of. Let's look at every single ship and see where it can get. And you start, and then like, oh, we didn't notice that he can go over there, but because he stepped out of the room, we started looking. That's what you pay for.
And that's what I like about having the setup of like there being a separate channel, is that everybody has to pay for it. It's like you don't get away with having secret conversations, which is something that in a lot of groups is not even a thing, period. You don't get to do it for free. It costs something.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think those people that would never have a secret conversation, at least they can know that, like, well, they're having to really tell everyone that they're having this conversation, and it's completely open. And it also is getting everybody thinking in a way that might not be strategically best for that player. So I just want it to cost something. That's really where I'm at personally in all of this. Is I definitely don't want it to not be a thing at all, but I also don't want it to be the easiest thing in the world to do.
Right. And that points to Unaligned Magi's last point here, which is games with whispering on TTS are the most boring games I've ever played of TI. It goes from this big social and strategy game to a game of people sitting silently typing to each other. Debates, threats, and negotiations are no longer shared by the group. What is the point in playing TI if it is all hidden away? you are taking away the thing that makes TI what it is. Because as a pure strategy game, it actually isn't very good. But as a space opera, it is awesome. And that's like the final point there is like TI is a politics game. And this is why I understand the people that say we don't even allow secret conversations because we want everything out in the open. And I think this is even Unaligned Magi's approach is like he likes everything at the table. And I'm fine with that. But like we were saying, the fact that it's a cost to step away means like you're changing what your negotiations mean. The difference though is in whisper chat, it is a completely different context. And and I've seen this too, where the games just turn into no one is speaking out loud to each other and no one knows who's talking to each other, and it just becomes like, okay, let's just sit here while everyone types. And it's not interesting because we don't get to see any of that element. We don't get to witness the crazy shenanigans that are going on. Because that's why it's fun to play a game with whisper chat, but it's not fun to like see it or be a part of it if you're not whispering yourself.
Right. I think it just changes the game too much to something that it is different, fundamentally different.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like, in my opinion, like worse or like, you know, I don't even know for sure that I prefer one over the other. Like as a player, I just know that the thing about us doing a tournament is that what we would like obviously prefer to do is like fly people from all over the world to like one place and do it up real big. That obviously that's what we would want to do. So TTS is just kind of, for us, I think more of a concession of the limitations.
Yeah, it is. That's true.
So we're just trying to get the game that we love, that we've fallen in love with, in a tournament setting. And that our experiences have been mostly playing it in person. So, I mean, if we give this a go and we realize like, oh, you know, we really need to lean into the TTS aspects of this more, then I think we will probably see that. And obviously, like, it's going to be a lot of people in the tournament, and we will get a lot of feedback, I think, just from their experience with it as well.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there, which is while this tournament is being held on Tabletop Simulator, I don't actually consider this a Tabletop Simulator tournament.
Yeah.
I think that's like a different thing we might do in the future, which is like someday, maybe we will have a tournament where we completely lean into TTS and do everything that opens up for us. And that would change the scope of that tournament. But it's like, that would be a tournament that is specifically designed for the TTS community. What we're trying to do is design a tournament that is for the whole community, and by nature of trying to make it international and something that anyone can join in on, we have to use TTS.
Right. We ready for that rundown? Do we feel good about this?
I feel good about this. I want to, I guess the last note is to say, if you disagree with us still on Secret Conversations, please know that you're not alone.
Right.
And that it's like this is the same as the king making an etiquette debate, which is just that like everyone feels differently and there isn't actually a right answer. If you're playing with your casual group, you should communicate these kinds of thoughts though to them. And you should know, like you all as a group should make a consensus about how you feel about these different things, because it certainly is not a commonly agreed upon issue. There is no consensus.
I agree. This is I really like when we hit like an issue like this and there's a lot of conversation kind of going one way or the other, just to realize that there's like so many different types of people that play Twilight Imperium and that see something great in it. And even if they're like kind of taking away like other things, like I don't know, I love it. What a game. I'm willing to say that I actually think it's a good game.
Yeah. I if I were to rate it, I would probably rate it highly. I don't know. I couldn't give it a score.
At least a 7.
At least.
You can go to our Twitter for game updates and announcements. You can check out our Facebook for questions. You can send Matt texts late at night or during the day if you're in Sweden. You can check out the Twilight Imperium subreddit. We post there weekly. That's how you get, some discussion in on episodes and stuff. We've got a BGG guild that is there too, and you could check in with RoboFish and be like, "Hey, RoboFish, what you doing?" We should just change the name of the BGG guild to RoboFish's tank. his little aquarium, and he's just in there swimming around. Yeah, he's like, "Oh yeah, I love it here." And you gotta come in and feed them and that's what the episodes are.
No,
Anyways,
actually, you know what? We always point out Robofish. I want to point out that also Brian, who's also known as Tom Booms, he's been dipping more and more into the BGG Guild because he knows that if he posts there, it'll probably get read on the show, because that's definitely happened multiple times. Because when it's the only post on BGG and it's longer than 4 sentences, there's a decent chance I'm just gonna throw it in the show, no matter what.
That's gonna get seen. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Any chance that calendar is going to be updated anytime soon?
Never.
Never? Okay, good. You can email us at spacecatspieceturtles@gmail.com. And that's where we like to receive This Imperium life stories and plays of the week. Love both of those. We also have a Patreon. And today is the last day that you can sign up for the tournament. Or that rather, today is the last day that you can contribute to the Patreon and then be able to register for the tournament.
Right. So I want to say there that for everyone who is a new person registering in the month of October, after it takes a couple days for that stuff to process. Then we send out a message to everyone with a link to a Google form where you can sign up and include your information, and that's how we contact everyone for the actual tournament. So if you're still wondering how do I know if I'm signed up for the tournament, if you were a member in September, I sent out a message last month. You should check your Patreon inbox, but I'm going to send another one out beginning of November, first couple days of November, and everyone will get a chance to join. We're going to leave that open for a few days. I think we're even going to leave it, what do we decide, a couple weeks before we actually turn the sign off.
Oh, for sure.
So you will have time you will have already contributed to the Patreon, but you will not miss a window to actually sign up for the games themselves. And then we'll go from there into scheduling games and the rest of the tournament. But today, October 31st, is your last chance to get in on the Patreon and be a part of the tournament.
Cool. You can check out our Discord for fun conversations and Patreon benefits. That's also where a lot of errata is coming from these days. That's where a lot of the discussion gets really hot and wild and wet and wild and crazy and wild. And we're sitting in Uranus reading that. Rate us on your podcast app of choice, especially Apple Podcasts / iTunes. And hey, what up? My name's Hunter. I am a stand-up comedian, and I want to fill you in on a couple shows. I kind of dumped all of my shows for the month in, so I'm probably not going to read all of these. But the main thing I want to let you know is that every Thursday, I co-host a show called Earthquake Hurricane. That starts at 8 p.m., and it happens at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, called Ford Food and Drink. It is a very good show. I really enjoy it, and I co-host it with some friends of mine. And this week, we actually will be having a super secret special guest that might not show up. So I feel like I don't necessarily want to say his name, but he is shooting a special with HBO in Portland this week. And yeah, so he will hopefully be coming by. Maybe he won't. I don't know. And then you can also catch me at a couple other shows where I'm just a guest performer. I'm going to be at Dead Comic Society on November 2nd at 8 p.m. That's a Rogue Brewing Company. I'm going to be on a Election Day show called Results May Vary on November 6th. That's at 5 p.m. At Kelly's Olympian. And on November 7th, I'm going to be a guest on a live taping of a podcast called Did We Solve It, which is a podcast featuring a couple Portland comedians that are friends of mine, and they kind of talk about race issues and stuff like that. It's very interesting, very different than what you're hearing now, though. And that is at 9 p.m. at Kickstand Comedy. And the last show I really want to tell you about is one that I co-host with a friend of mine named Jake Silberman. It's a really great show called Comedy Bender, and that is on November 10th at noon, and that takes place at The Lamp, which is a bar connected to the Aladdin Theater. Pretty busy November for me, comedically.
Holy cow, yeah, that was ridiculous.
Got a lot going on this month. Let's thank some Patreoners.
I want to thank some Space Kitties. I want to thank Jim Boff, Jada Pake, and Dustin Doom. And I also want to thank the patrons Humble SSRRU, Daniel Bowley, who recently emailed us, and I think I may have even still just butchered it. He said it's like goalie. So Daniel Bowley and A.M. Reichel.
Do you want me to read
And-
the play of the week?
Nope, I want to read it because I didn't write it. I wrote this is my play of the week. It's not really my play, but it was in a game that I played with Yin for Life, Aviator, Panster, Zendog, and Wecker. So shout out to all 5 of you for joining me on. We started a game somewhat early last Saturday, and there was just a really cool moment in it that I wanted to kind of break down. It was the very first agenda phase, I think. There's going to be a lot of details that I have totally wrong. As Wecker pointed out, I seemed out of it that game. It was probably the worst game I've ever played, and it was me as ghosts. That aside, it was like our first agenda phase, and I was tied with the lead with 2 other players. And it was, it's an early lead, right? So it's like 3 points or 4 points or something. There's 2 other players that are just 1 point behind us, and then one player, the X-Chaw, is trailing a little bit more behind that, maybe 1 or 2 more points. The previous action phase, myself and my Isarl neighbor had decided, against my own advice that I constantly give on this show, we exchanged support for the thrones. I had been nervous about my borders and decided to just stop the conversation. And I don't know, it's not how I would normally play Ghosts, and it was another ingredient to a horrible game that I played. But after we traded support for the thrones, most of the table, of course, moaned and groaned at the fact that it was happening and anticipated that there was going to be more of these exchanges, right? Once 2 people exchange, everyone starts exchanging. But back to the agenda phase, Seed of the Empire is revealed, which is the one where it's for the players in the lead gain a victory point against the players in last place gain a victory point. Since X-Chaw is the only one who will benefit from the against, the debate begins to rage. I was completely set on getting the seed point because I was in the lead. And there were 2 others, so it's giving half the players a lead. I thought it made total sense. Why wouldn't the 3 of us all go for it? But there's a case to be made for just giving X-Chaw a leg up and not letting anyone who's already in the lead get further ahead. I'm the first to vote, and myself and Isarl finally decide to cross our fingers and hope that the other players will just go ahead and vote in our favor. Well, as luck would have it, on the next player's turn, the secret plan that was happening underneath our noses was revealed. The vote was never a question because the 2 other players that are tied for second place each offered each other their support for the thrones, which now set them also tied for the lead, because if you remember, they were only 1 point behind us. So now with 5 players all in first place, they all vote for, and everyone gains a point, leaving X-Chaw in the dust.
That's smart that they saw that opportunity. They were like, listen, we can both get 2 points here if we just do this.
It was such a great moment, too, because I spent so long kind of like debating. I did what I did. I just like took so much time out of everyone's day to like, okay, well, if we break it down this way, and then like it came to Isarl's turn to vote, and like the debate continued to go, and it was just like, okay, how are we going to do this? Do you want to do that? I don't know. And just like really talking through every single possible decision. And then the second it was that next person's turn to vote, they were just like, okay, cool. You want to swap support for the thrones, and then we'll just get it? Oh, yeah, let's do that. Okay, cool, done. Like probably 20 minutes of discussion just burned for them to have already known what they were going to do.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, that's a really good play. I love it when people just like recognize little opportunities like that. That's such a Twilight Imperium type thing, especially with you like kind of filibustering the whole process.
That's what was so good about it too. Was it was them, like me and Isarl had to spend a lot of votes. So they were just sitting there being shut up because it's like, hey, the more votes they burn, the better. It was that. I'm pretty sure it was the first agenda. I might be totally wrong here, but it's sort of the thing of just like, let these 2 talk it out because they're going to end up like the easy. If we talked right now, we would all just use 1 vote or whatever, or like nobody would vote. We would let it go through.
Now they could goad somebody into wasting some votes.
Exactly.
That's great.
It was some version of that scenario. So it ended up being just really brilliant. And as soon as it happened, I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Play of the week. Done. So congrats to all those players that were a part of that. And thank you for showing me how to play the game well, because I did not play well in that particular game.
Yeah, good. I like hearing about that, especially after all this talk about you.
You only get to be in those every now and then when I just totally tank it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Those are yummy times. Yummy times for me.
Well, let's get out of here. We are, man, let me tell you, we are dangerously close to having a really big tournament to prepare, Hunter. So we need to start.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Buckling down and getting ready to.
Oh, speaking of which, where's my video? Where's my video?
I have to go. Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles, and thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.